Obviously, we're all ecstatic around here with the news the other day of Ben Johnson returning as our offensive coordinator. But now there's talks of Aaron Glenn is being interviewed by the Arizona Cardinals. Straight out, are you worried about losing Aaron Glenn as your defensive coordinator?
I am not. And I hate to say this, but I'm wondering if Aaron Glenn is just getting those, obligatory interviews because he's black. Because he wasn't
the Rooney Rule.
The Rooney Rule. You always have to think that. Because he wasn't really on most people's radar until they started this interview process, and now a couple of teams said, well, let's talk to Aaron Glenn.
Now, is it more so that you don't take it seriously because you believe it's not a serious interview?
I don't think it's a serious interview. I haven't heard his name associated with any teams. But now all of a sudden, you start interviews, and you have to have a brother or two on there. So all of a sudden, Aaron Glenn is getting interviews. I just don't think it's that serious.
Right. So if we take this conversation about Aaron Glenn as opposed to the Ben Johnson with Carrot, you thought those were all serious.
I thought
there was a legitimate
serious
opportunity.
But
for Johnson.
I think the thing that Ben Johnson may have found out is that when he interviewed, it was probably a lot more with these teams than he was bargaining for. And maybe he didn't want to have to deal with ownership who meddled. There was probably certain aspects within those organizations he didn't want to deal with, and maybe the pay wasn't what he expected it to be. So he's like, you know what? I'll make my little statement. I want to build things in Detroit and things to be great, and I'm going to stay here. I think that played a factor. So
Terry thinks that, the seriousness, and this is just all going through the Rooney Rule and doing it because you have to do it. The other thing that I was looking at it is that, as I always looked at it as if I had a choice of who I would retain or who would stay, I'd want Ben Johnson. But my question is, Terry, is that because I'm looking for the next Ben Johnson as my defensive coach? Like, is Aaron Glenn the right defensive coordinator for this Detroit Lions job if he doesn't take a coach elsewhere?
I think he proved that.
Okay.
First of all, he had a bad defense, and it played that way. But at some point, you have to figure that out. And whether he got with Dan Campbell, whether he got with other coaches, they figured it out. So that helps his cause there. And it leads him to believe that the Lions are not going to have the defensive struggles at the beginning of next season that they had at the beginning of this season. They may not be great, but maybe they come out the chute. Lions defense is mediocre, which you would have taken in the first 8 games of the season. It wasn't even mediocre. It was historically bad.
Right, where you're scoring 40 points and 30 and losing games and stuff like this. You look at the Miami game, the Seattle game, even the Buffalo game, all this stuff. You're in there, so you have to improve. So,
or how about this? The Lions offense scores in 2.5 minutes, and the other team says, watch this. We're going to score in 90 seconds. You ain't going to stop it. That's what was happening.
So is it more that, so this is just smoke and mirrors? You shouldn't, if you wouldn't worry about losing Aaron Glenn to another coach because we haven't heard it.
Yeah, may not be completely, because I do have to throw this one thing in. The defense did improve. When you look at his resume for the last 7 or 8 games, you look at him and say, you know what? That's pretty damn good. He figured that out, so maybe I would want to talk to him. But the Rooney Rule has me believing that this might be tokenism, because I didn't hear his name. I heard his name last year prior, right, but I didn't hear his name this time. Now, if he's back in the hopper next year, I think I would take it more seriously.
Now, Sam, what do you think about this? Do you take this sort of seriously? Because if I look at Aaron Glenn, like I could see him as a head coach, as a leader of men, right? Where I'm looking at Ben Johnson, it's too soon. You can be, but I like to see you get more reps, right? Being younger. Aaron Glenn's been around a lot. Like, that's why I could see it, but I also believe what Terry's saying, and you hear this with other teams interviewing different guys. How's the offensive coordinator in Denver? getting getting interviews and stuff to Terry's point. But Sam, is this something you're worried about? But like I take it that you were more like me, more worried about Ben Johnson leaving than Aaron Glenn. But where are you at with Aaron Glenn?
Well, of course I was more worried about Ben Johnson leaving because that was a top 5 offense under Ben Johnson. The totality of the defense for the season for the Lions was still not good. But what Aaron Glenn did the last 10 games of the season was he basically turned it around. Like, he did the one thing that he could do to restore my faith in him after that historically bad start. In those 10 games, obviously the Lions were 8-2, and in 6 of those games, the Lions allowed less than 20 points, and they were 6-0 in those games. And another thing I think we have to look at with Aaron Glenn and why I think a team would maybe want him as their head coach is I think we all agree that the Lions rookie class this year was spectacular. I think around the room that's pretty universal. Mm-hmm. And why was that? Because of defensive players. Not because of offensive players, because of guys like Aiden Hutchinson, James Houston, Kirby Joseph, Malcolm Rodriguez, and their insane development under Aaron Glenn. And you have to give him a ton of credit. And if you're a team that has a lot of young players and you look at what Aaron Glenn did with those defensive rookies for the Lions, that would be intriguing to me. So I don't think it's just smoke and mirrors. I am a little bit worried that we could lose Aaron Glenn, that the Lions could lose Aaron Glenn, but at the same time, I think the NFL is kind of moving more towards offensive coaches. I don't know. I think he'll stay, but I don't blame teams for wanting to interview him. He did a spectacular job at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think if I had to take generic offensive coordinator, generic defensive coordinator, and hire one as my head coach, I would go for the offensive coordinator because the rules are set up. It's difficult for the defense. And I say this, for the most part, you don't stop an offense in the National Football League. They kick a field goal, or they make a offensive error, or you pick them off, or recover a fumble. You just don't roll up and go 3 and out for the most part. And because now what they're doing in the NFL, if it's 4th and 2 or 4th and 1, they're going for it. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that back in the day. So it's very difficult to stop an offense. So you want that creative offensive mind to think about, okay, what are we going to do to score a bunch of points?
No, and I think that's too when you look at Arizona and stuff like that. But Spencer, my thing is too is it's to Sam's point about the improvement in the youth and stuff like this. Yes, if you had to give me a choice, I'm choosing Ben Johnson with another year with this offense. But I changed my tune from beginning of the year as this defense improved, and I want to see Aaron Glenn back. I want to see this team back with one more shot at it before guys are gone from free agency or they poach our coaching tree or Dan Campbell's coaching tree starts. Is that not fair to say? Because it would be more of a loss, I think, because of what they've built. To Sam's point.
Yeah, I agree, and it's obviously Ben Johnson did a great. He's probably the better coordinator, but I think Aaron Glenn would be the better head coaching candidate because Terry made a great point too about him being a leader of men, him having those leadership capabilities where you see him. Me and Easy spoke to Aleem McNeil at when we were at the Pistons game, and he said Aaron Glenn's a genius. He's a defensive genius. And you look at what he's doing, and the Lions in the past 7 games of the season had the 4th best DVOA in the NFL, which is defensive value over average. So it's how much better you are than the average median defense, and they were 4th in the NFL. And so it's impressive, like you guys all said, the improvement of the rookies, how much they've gone, and even not the rookies or the second-year guys. You look at his veterans that he has. It's an Alex Anzalone who had the best year of his career. It's a guy like Isaiah Buggs and John Kaminsky that they poached off of waivers that come in here and be immediate factors and important pieces. So it's Aaron Glenn deserves credit for what he's done for sure, and he deserves coaching opportunity. But I agree. I also agree with Terry. I do think it is just a Rooney Rule type of thing, which is I don't like the Rooney Rule. I think I don't know. It is the tokenism. You're not taking these candidates seriously. It's disingenuous. You're not taking them seriously. You know what? I
don't like it either. But guess what? If you don't have it, we don't get hired.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing. For whatever reason, black people have to always go through these little games in the National Football League.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, we were too stupid to play quarterback. Couldn't play center. Mm-hmm.
Never get a kicker.
Can't be a coach.
Yeah.
Can't be, we have to get through all these hurdles, but you have to have something in place because an owner's not going to just say, I like this black
We'll
guy.
interview him,
I'm gonna hire him.
And
Now I got into it with Lion fans back in the day. I used to talk to Andrea
Lions
Kramer,
fans.
who covered the NFL, and every spring or summer she would call me and tell me who the hot assistant coaches were, and it reached the point where the Lions were sort of thinking of replacing Wayne Fontes, and she told me, dude, you got to push Tony Dungy in Detroit. First of all, he loves the Lions. He's from Michigan. He's a really good coach. He's going to challenge for a championship somewhere. So why not Detroit? So I talked to her for a couple weeks. So I started pushing Tony Dungy in some of my columns. The response from the readers, the only reason you pushing him is because he's black. The rumor was, and this is what they do for every black candidate. Well, he doesn't interview well.
Yeah.
So I had to, dealing with people with that.
Can he control the sidelines?
Huh?
Can he control the sidelines?
Yeah, it's so many dumb things that you have to deal with. So I heard all of those things. Then he goes to Tampa, and then I started getting letters from people. How come you didn't push Tony Dungy hard enough? I did.
Yeah.
You told me no. The only reason you pushed him is because he's freaking black. So that's on y'all. So the hell with all of y'all.
well, to the Lions and the Fords or whatever, they hired Jim Caldwell, right? They also, I thought, fired him too early too. But look at isn't there? I think I saw in the chat thread and it's wrong, but there aren't 7 GMs. Black, like our guy's a black guy, and he's doing a hell of a job and knows what it is. Maybe other teams might get on board because these guys are, Ozzie Newsome did a heck of a job with
Right.
like there's black gentlemen that are unbelievable football minds running organizations, making the biggest decisions. Why isn't it the best man for the job? I understand that
because the belief is we are never the best man for the job. We had to go through. Is he smart enough? Is he qualified? There's so many hurdles you got to go through. People don't feel sorry. And I talked to an athletic director in the SEC, and he selected a black coach but the alumni didn't like him.
You know what's crazy?
So he had to back off.
It's crazy because, here, if you're looking for who's one of the most tenured coaches to play, it's Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh and what they do and that. So I don't get it. I get it because that's the way it is. And if you're sitting here, you've experienced it, you've watched it, you've talked about it, wrote columns and stuff. So I'm just glad of the guys that we have in control here. So whether we lose Aaron Glenn or not, I hope we don't, because I'd like to see another season building. But I'm leaning more to you, Terry, that it's more,
But I also think that I'd rather have Aaron Glenn as my head coach than Ben Johnson, because if Dan Campbell is going to pick one of them to motivate his team, to educate his team, he's going to pick Aaron Glenn.
Yes.
And I think Ben Johnson is one of those guys, when we're in the room together, he does a good job of...
he's a great X's and O's guy.
X's and O's guy, and that's fine. But it's different to be a head coach.
Yeah.
You gotta rev up the troops. You gotta do a lot of things. For instance, Rod Marinelli. And we make fun of Rod Marinelli in this town because he was a disaster as a head coach. But very good coordinator. There's some guys, I'm a coordinator, that's what I am, but you put me in that big seat, I don't know.
Yeah.